All right. Hello, everybody, whoever's joining us. We're going to call the meeting of February 6, 2021 to order. Ben, we take the roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor Napolitani.
Here.
Council members Achara.
Here.
Donlin.
Here.
Fisher.
Here.
And Mayor Siciliano.
Here. The notice requirement for the Open Public Meeting Act for this meeting has been satisfied. Copy of the annual notice sent to the Asbury Park Press, coaster posted in Town Hall, filed in the office of the Municipal Clerk December 30, 2020. Items for discussion today will be the municipal budget. Can we do a salute? Salute. All right, well, let's just do a salute to the flag since we're here in the meeting room. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America
and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Thank you, everybody. We're going to turn this over shortly to our CFO, Steve Gallagher. I just wanted to let anybody know that this is a document that's been worked on by many of the department heads, Mr. Gallagher, his department, Rob, and they work on this almost the whole year round. As soon as we're done with this budget, next year's we'll start, and a lot of work goes into it. Again, they meet with the department heads, they try to meet their needs for the year, see what they were lacking the year before, and then we come up with something that, how can we make all this work in the most responsible way without compromising any of the services that we deliver to the public, and trying to keep the cost down as reasonably as possible. And I say reasonable, everybody knows 2020 was a very trying year, and most municipalities, every mayor I've spoken to, were compromised one way or the other, impacted highly by lack of fees or lack of many other things. And so we're trying to work within that. So I'll say this today, what's going to happen is Mr. Gallagher is going to present his case. And that is his budget, the way he sees it, the way he feels that the town can operate in a very comfortable way. Our job as council is not to be his adversary, but to really review the budget, come up with suggestions. Nothing's really going to be settled today for the public, in case they're wondering. This is the process is going to be. He's going to get a sense of where we would like to see the budget, what areas we can maybe improve on, what areas maybe we can hold off if we had to, again, without compromising services to the taxpayers, and that's who our fiduciary responsibility is to, after all. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Gallagher, and he will present his budget, and then we'll take it from there. And there'll be questions throughout the session here, and I think by the time the session's over, he'll have a good sense of where the mayor and council are. He may not like it, but he'll have that feeling, and then we'll sharpen our pencils and see what we can do. Mr. Gallagher.
Okay. So as the mayor had referenced, the budget starts back in really towards the end of September. October, the department heads get their instructions, and they work on developing their requests. So November, we have the first week of November, we have department head meetings. Between November 23rd and on November 23rd, we have our first public hearing on the proposed budget. That's where we have a meeting where the department heads come in and present their case on their requests. It is a public meeting. The public is invited to come. And at that time, we start to really kind of trim up the budget. Between November, the end of November and the middle of January, any kind of new requests or unforeseen events that require us to address the needs in the budget are handled during that period. We finalize the salary and wages requests for the town, and we pull the package together. February 6th, today, we have our budget discussion with the governing body. When we turn over the budget, it becomes their budget, and then we present basically the meat of the requests. And then March 25th is our anticipated introduction of the 2021 budget. April 8th is when we have what I like to call the Broadway presentation, which is our budget presentation to the public, and then we go for adoption on April 22nd. That's the budget calendar in a nutshell.
Hey, Steve, just housekeeping. I believe the first 3 lines need to be 2020,
Oh, okay. Yes.
just when you put it up on the website.
Okay.
Told you they'd prepare in advance.
Exactly. So, COVID was a pretty big shock on the 2020 budget. What I have here are the what I call the losses in revenue. In 2019, we had $904,386 of excess revenues, which goes to surplus. Anything that we receive above and beyond the amount anticipated goes to surplus, which helps us to rebuild it, which we then use to support the following year's budget. For 2020, we had a hit to surplus of $819,974, for a total swing in revenue of negative $1,724,000. And these are the items that make up the biggest losses. And most all of these revenues are ones that you would think that we would incur because of the closed lockdowns and everything like that. So, you know, our other licenses, we were down 10,000. Planning board, we were down 12. Board of Adjustments, 26,000. Construction code dropped 52,000. And this is where you really get into it. Pool and tennis snack bar down 50, just about 54,000. Pool guest fees about 67,000. Colonial Terrace Pro Shop, we were down 75,000. Pool and tennis memberships, 122,000. Recreation, $140,000 down there. Municipal court fines, almost $250,000 there. Interest income is where we really got banged. $354,000 drop. Okay, because when COVID hit, interest rates cratered, and the revenue that we had received in the prior year evaporated. Project Extend, which is another one of our strong revenue producers, down $377,000. So this was a pretty big impact on our 2020 budget and our surplus. Okay. Now this is our budget proposed and compared to last year's modified budget. Last year our budget was $38,825,546. This year's proposed budget is $39,246,686 and 75 cents. The overall increase is $421,140, which is roughly a little bit over 1%. It's 1.08% increase from last year to this year. Major budget drivers would be the contractual wage increases of $174,000, the group health insurance of $164,000, police and fire pension system $91,000, and public employee retirement system 46,000. And those two numbers are statutory requirements. We don't have any say in that. The pension system gives us those numbers, and we have to pay it. Okay, so with all of that, municipal taxes, we raised $22,304,536 last year. This year we're looking at $23,300,067, roughly an increase of about $995,000. And the municipal tax rate went from 0.405 to 0.408, or 0.3 of a penny increase. Okay. And this here is the schedule in the budget document for taxes. And if you take, if you look at like $500,000 assessment last year to this year, you're looking at municipal taxes of being about $14 for that particular category. And you can see the change in this left here, this right-hand column here, depending on the assessed valuation. Okay. And that's pretty much the budget presentation in that regard. I've got surplus and debt service analysis too, if you want to hold off on the questions.
So,
We'll go around. You guys have questions, just, feel free to jump in there. If you want to start. Rob, you have anything you want to?
well, I'm sorry, Steve, so you're gonna do what after this? Because traditionally, this is long.
Well, I've got surplus analysis and debt service. Okay. All right, so this slide here is our surplus analysis. And what it does is I show the components that increase and decrease the amounts of surplus. Okay, we show the surplus regenerated, which is on this green line here. Okay, and I show the beginning balance, the surplus used to support the budget, surplus regenerated, and the balance at the end of the year. There's also deferred charges that play into effect because it locks up money that we would normally have available to us for surplus. And the bottom green line here is surplus available for the township purposes at the end of the year. And that would be for supporting the budget or for addressing any emergencies that would occur during the year, such as our friend COVID. Okay, down here, okay, these two rows represent the target for surplus, and the target being 20% of the budget appropriations to 35% of the budget appropriations is our stated policy. Okay, so for 2020, which is this year here, we were able to regenerate $6,772,486 in surplus. Now, we had that big hit to revenues, and that's right up here. Okay, we had 106,000 of delinquent tax collections that we were able to add to surplus. We had a very good tax collection year last year. It was the third highest tax collection rate that we've had, and I went back to 1995. So it was pretty spectacular considering the upheaval that we went through for 2020. Okay, and then we have miscellaneous revenues unanticipated. Those are revenues that basically are erratic. They vary from year to year, so it makes it tough to anticipate them. And we come down to appropriations. Now, we have $1,700,000 worth of appropriations that we canceled from the 2019 budget. Okay, then we have $612, which is the balance of debt service that we have to do every year. And then this one here is kind of a new one, and I did this really to save our surplus. This $1,160,000 are appropriations that I was able to cancel out of the 2020 budget. Normally, we save the cancellations for the next year. But this year, because we had such a lack of revenues, conversely, we also had a lack of expenditures in recreation and Project Extend and our other rec programs. So I was able to go in and pare down the balances of the 2020 budget and put that back into surplus. If I didn't do that, we wouldn't have the $7,210,000 of surplus to use to support the budget. So we were able to bring our surplus back, but we still took a significant hit. Okay, so here's the surplus last year, $9,348,000. This is the surplus this year, $8,911,244. Drop of roughly about $440,000. So even with all of the tools available to me, we still took a significant hit. With 2021 budget, I'm anticipating the same $7,210,000 to support the budget. Okay, I anticipate that we're going to probably generate about $6.7 million worth of surplus back. Okay, and that's going to continue to erode our surplus balance, so I anticipate the balance will come in someplace around $8.4 million. And to show you how good I was really at doing this was my projected number, which was for last year at this time, $8,889,000, and we came in at $8,911,000. So I thought that was pretty good. So I'm pretty confident that we'll end up someplace around that number. Okay, and that's with the current proposed budget as it stands. And then I show out projected kind of where I think things are going to go. Okay, so like I said, we kind of erode surplus a little bit and then start rebuilding it slowly in 2023 and 2024. Okay, and these are the components that make up my estimate. Okay, I'm figuring roughly about 1.7 million to lapse for appropriations. Revenues I think will come back up. And then here's the downside to our stellar collection rate for taxes, is that the amount that we were able to obtain from delinquent tax collections actually went down by a pretty significant amount. So we only collected 106,000. I'm projecting maybe we'll collect 131 next year, and then it slowly goes back up. Tax collections, I used a rate of 98.79, which is kind of our 5-year average for collections, and I'm just keeping the miscellaneous revenues roughly around the same. Okay. And then we have this lovely figure, it's called Reserve for State Tax Appeals. Every year I establish a reserve for state tax appeals of $450,000. And the reason I do that is to minimize the impact on the current budget and provide a reserve for paying on the tax appeal judgments that we receive throughout the year. And the tax appeal judgments sometimes affect the current year, but most of the times they go back several years. And so the reserve helps me protect our surplus from being affected by the tax appeals that we do incur. Okay. Now, one of the things that I also do is I do this nice little debt service analysis, and it's important to keep our eye on debt service because this is a big driver in the budget. This year we're looking at $3,678,000 worth of debt service, and that's for 3 bonds that we currently have outstanding. Now, when we refinanced all the ordinances last year, I was able to not only take all of the ordinances that we had open, but I also included the ordinance that we did last year in 2019 in that in that bond. Okay, and what that did was it kind of gave us a free year. Okay, so for this year we didn't have any bond anticipation notes out. Okay, but for 2021 we're going to have to issue debt on that $2.2 million that we did in the ordinance last year for 2020's various improvements. Okay, so then it becomes a dance as to how we want to get to where we're paying these things off. Now, in 4 years, in 2026, actually in 2025, we make our last payment on this particular bond issue from 2007. Okay, so in 2026, I anticipate that we're probably going to take whatever bond ordinances that we have open and are being funded through bond anticipation notes and funding that as well. So I'm anticipating we're going to do a bond of about $11,450,000. And you can see that debt service coming in right there. Okay. Again, we get kind of a free year, and I'm keeping the debt service steady with that by paying off a good portion of the bond anticipation notes that'll be open at that time. Now this kind of gives us an opportunity because I believe that we should be able to get it so that we can actually have all of our debt service handled through bond anticipation notes rather than going to permanent financing. And the reason why I like the bond anticipation notes, first off, you got a 10-year payout. Secondly, it's short-term financing, so the interest rates generally are going to be lower than if you permanently finance. 3, you don't have this massive issuance cost. Issuance cost probably is anywhere between $150,000 and $200,000 of a bond sale. So eliminating that $200,000, well, you know, there's some roads that can be paved and whatnot. So it's cheaper to go with the bands, which is kind of like a 1-year financing as opposed to going to permanent fixed bonds. So that is kind of where I see the goal going, because in 2020, like I said, 2030, another bond issue drops off. And if we can just maintain these two and get it to where we actually have a program where we kind of finance through bands, I think the town saves money, and we have a much more conservative budget. We can actually get a little more stability in debt service, because that's really the important key, is to keep this steady. When you're doing, we did 2.2 million last year. With the bond anticipation note sales, generally we take a tenth of that and pay it off every year. So that's $220,000. Slap on the interest cost with that, so you're at maybe $260,000 or $280,000, and that $280,000 has no place to go but the budget. So I'd rather avoid that if we can possibly do it. Keep the debt service level steady, and keep the impacts to our budget at a minimum. Okay. And with that said, that's kind of everything that I've got. And now we can do
So,
questions.
yeah, Steve, in your document you presented to us, so you mentioned, and I saw this coming, I know it's going to continue to bring us goodwill, hopefully, or added assessments that are coming on board.
Mhm.
And I just think this year coming, we have those Toll Brother units and a few others that we can start to realize coming in, and when they're fully realized, it's really should offset this a little bit more.
Well, the
You're not really talking about that too much in this.
well, the added and omitted taxes, that is a good vehicle. But, like this year we had the Highview apartment complex come on. We had about, I'm going to say 10 or 15 of the Enclave units come on board. There was a couple other high-end houses that came on board as well. We only really got about $330,000.
No, I get it, because, and I mentioned, somebody said, what are you going to get out of that development? Well, 75 units at $750 a pop, you do the math, but then we're 40 cents of the revenue on that.
Right.
Really, it's not going to be, it's a couple $100,000 extra each year, though.
Well,
to
that's
us, it's gonna help
that's
out.
the upside is that we are growing the assessments, which is always good because then you're spreading out the tax burden amongst a greater base.
Right.
Okay, and that really is beneficial to all the taxpayers. But we do have that project going on. We will probably, I guess, complete that this year. There's some other developments coming on board as well.
Right.
But we've seen a I would say, a nice annual increase in assessments going back now for about 4 or 5 years. Last year we added on about 300 or 3.5% in our assessed valuation. And I anticipate we'll probably do that same number next year as well.
Yeah, we've gone from, the market increases helped as well, but I remember maybe 5-6 years ago, a $3.8 billion valuation, we're at $5 billion now. And I can see that going up more, not just from property value increase, but what we're gonna start adding on, projects that have already been approved, and probably won't realize them this year or next year, but I think the forecast is gonna be a little bit better than that. I know you're being very conservative, and that's your job.
Well,
Well, I think we can do a little better overall on this whole budget. There's some areas here, Steve, not to knock you off course, I know you're gonna, answer a lot of these, but, some areas where you maybe anticipate it really high, and I'm just wondering what the big increase in the police department, I know maybe we left off some stuff last year and you want to add it on this year. That seems like a pretty big spread. It's almost 400,000.
in the police department?
Yeah.
It looked like you moved, and I don't know if you can hear me, it looked like you transferred some money from one budget line to another budget line, so I don't know if that's captured on what
Well,
I was asking.
Yeah, I'm just looking at what we expended last year was 7.3, and now this year requested 7.7. And I get it, maybe you left off a few cars, but I know we're always adding the vehicles.
Are
I'm
you
just-
talking about the police salary and wage or the other expenses?
Page 20.
Yeah, if you want to get to what you present to us, line number 745 on page 28. Page 28, 745.
Okay, yeah.
I'm
So,
not singling them
uh,
out. I'm just saying these are some of the big ones that jump off the page.
If you look at the police department has two things going on. First off, they had $50,000 worth of uniform expense that went from other expenses to salary and wage.
Okay.
That was contractual. The second thing is that if you haven't noticed, we've had a lot of people retiring.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, it is a good thing.
Right, so what's the breakage on that, roughly?
Well, let me finish here
Yeah,
with
okay.
what I'm saying here, which is that we have, over the past 3 or 4 years, put in a lot of new guys who are on the steps. Now, a cop going from one step to another, that's better than a 10-12% jump right there in salary and wage. Okay, even though we have the steps kind of frozen, they're still getting a pretty decent increase every time they step up. So you've got a lot more guys now stepping up. Whereas in the past couple of years, or years prior, most of the guys were already at the top step, so all that we were getting was the COLA. Okay, that's why you've got the increase this year. You know, the positions, the top positions don't change. You know, we've got guys leaving, they're being filled by promotions, and then we have guys coming in from behind, you know, so,
But Steve, you had a lot of breakage with the guys that are high up. That's, I think, what I'm looking at those numbers as well. I have another question in this area.
right.
But I think if you're recommending 7,686, we expended to date 7,363,000, and the request is 7,700. I'd like to know what the breakage is with whom we lost. And I know there's guys going through the guide because I know guides
Yeah.
pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And when you lose them at the top, that's a big chunk. And I know them going through doesn't equate to what we lost at the top.
Right, I mean, you know, you've got guys coming in at 45 as opposed to 120 for a top guy. However,
Yeah, but that's all, you
Right.
are also equating their longevity and everything else that's within that contract.
but what you need to do is also look at what happened in the prior year. Now, last year, we actually had a decrease in the amount of salary and wage for police because of the breakage that we had
Year
from
before.
guys retiring. So we had a decrease last year in overall salary and wages, and this year we're having an increase. The 300,000, that's going to be all the guys who are in steps.
Steve, wouldn't it have to do a lot with promotions too?
No,
Would that have anything to do with it?
you know, because even though you have guys coming up, right, we're still budgeting, you know, for the high guys because they're going to be filled. It's the new guys coming in that are at a lower budget. You know, we had a significant reduction last year, okay, where we actually had the police salary and wage line that go down because of all the guys who were newly hired. But now all those guys that were hired, they're now stepping up.
Okay. Well, look,
You know, I can do a more in-depth analysis for you, but that's really at the end of the day, that's what the cause is. And overall, the increase is 2.6% from last year. That 2.6%, you know, that's actually pretty reasonable given that, you know, the COLA was 2.5. So it's not too terribly bad.
no, and we don't want anybody to think for 1 minute nobody here supports the police, because we do. And going back to 2008, when Bill and I were here, we were trying to push the agenda to get more hirees, and we got it to the number, finally, a staffing level I think the chief can work with.
Yeah.
And we improved that by over 5 officers in an 8-year period. And we don't want them to lack on any equipment because they serve the community well, and we agree on that. It's just that when we see a big spread, and I hear what you're saying, we realized our down year last year on what Johnny calls the, you know,
Yeah.
what you're realizing back on the retirees. I just still think there's still a $400,000 spread there.
That's my only question. I'm
Well,
not questioning the uniforms or anything like that. All I'm with Chris.
It's a
on
big
this
spread.
one, where we don't want to pad the budget just so we
Well,
can
this
build.
is, yeah,
and
this is not
especially this
padding,
year.
you know, I mean, you can see in the salary and wages in the back here, you know, what we're actually budgeting for. But the other thing too is that for 2020, you know, we had a lot of vacancies, that,
That we're gonna fill.
So you think the number was inordinately low because we weren't really paying out a full 63?
we had at one point, I think, 5 positions open, maybe more, in the police department.
Right. So if they, I'm fine with it if we have to fill them. I just
Still don't see the 400.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's
Right,
why, that's
exactly.
why the actual expenditures were lower last year, you know,
probably trim it by at least
they're
100.
lower.
The other question I have on this page, couple lines up.
Mm-hmm.
Group health insurance. You've got a $700,000 increase from what's been expended to date. Now, in 2019, it was $1,994,000. Now, didn't group health insurance go down
No, it actually went up.
this year?
Yeah, it went up about 1.9, maybe 2%.
Well, even
All
1%
right.
of
All right, so-
$1,900,000 isn't. a $600,000 increase.
We also have more people who are on our health insurance this year. You know, we were down to around 122. I think we're at 127 now.
Five other people.
Right.
Well, 5 other people doesn't, to me, that's not $600,000.
Right, family plan's 22 grand or something.
And they pay through Chapter 78.
35.
And a Chapter 78 anyway, so they're paying a chunk of that.
They're paying, yes.
Right, anyway, I think what you're gonna hear is going through this, there's some areas that we're looking at, that maybe you should, if you can revisit. I'll give you a couple, let Rob give you a couple, everybody give you a couple, and then if you don't have to defend them now, if you want, you can certainly speak on them, and help us understand them better, especially for the new folks. When I say new, people haven't worked on a budget more than 5 cycles, you're new.
Sure.
It took me 10 cycles and I still got, and I'm on my 20th. But I'll move down a little bit more also. You have a little bit more built in this time for, where are we at here? Streets and roads, hang on right there. Motor fuels, did I see somewhere? Hang on a
I
second.
saw that one too.
Yeah, I mean, that seemed like it jumped up quite a bit there. Page 30, 833, line 833. I mean, yeah, 10%, 20% more is 50, 60,000, but we're up 100 and almost 200.
Well, we haven't moved that line at all over the past couple of years because, you know, the cost of motor fuels. has
And it went
been
up
kind
just recently, I get
yeah,
that.
No, but I mean, it's been erratic.
Yes,
And we've had some years where, you know, in one year you have a low of maybe $1.90 a gallon to where it's $3.50 a gallon. So that's a very unpredictable area, which is why I don't change it. You know, one of the other unpredictable areas, of course, is the sanitation, the
Tipping fees.
tipping
Solid
fees,
waste
yes, yeah, I
disposal.
saw that too, yeah.
Yeah. Now, we just got news that the county is bumping solid waste disposal costs of $15 a ton. Okay? And last year,
I remember when it was 5.
yeah. Well, you know, every year or thereabouts, they hit us with this surprise increase. Recycling, of course, is, you know, that's another area where we've had such a massive swing.
Do we know when Mazza's is opening?
Allegedly sometime this year. Now, depending on when they open, you know, that increase with the county can be offset somewhat with
Right.
that decrease from Mazza. But we're still going to come out at about 1.4 million just in our tipping fees alone, if not more.
Are we collecting any more on our leaf pickup? I mean, are we jacking the price up on that, or we have no control over what we get paid for that?
We have no control. I mean, they have the mulching going on over there. And, you know, sometimes they can get people to take it, other times it's like, you know, they can't give it away. You know, most of the solid waste costs have been just the county landfill. And of course, the hit we've taken because of recycling. You know, we used to actually generate a lot of money from recycling. Now we're spending a lot of money
Right.
to get rid of it. You know, which is one of the big problems with the budget.
All right. Well, those are a couple things on the expenditures. There's a couple on income as well that I think we're being very conservative on, and I know you can't anticipate anything, but always, as always, and I think we do well there, and I think we'll do well this year also, is the construction code fees. I mean, I know you're being conservative, brother, but geez, you're off by almost $500,000 on that one too. 400, all right, 400.
The thing with, you know, and you've got to remember one of the things about our budget is that we budget conservatively because we use it to generate surplus.
No
That's
doubt, and
the
I
budget.
think it's important people should know Well, over 21% of the budget supported by surplus that we are able to rebuild,
Yeah.
which is great. We put it right back into the economy.
Now, the problem with, Uniform Construction Code is that it is gonna taper off. I see that already happening. We're not supposed to use construction code fees to support the other functions of the government. Construction code costs us about $600,000 to run. And the other thing is that anything extra we get there, goes to help rebuild surplus. The other thing is that we've got revenues in here, okay? And you can look at interest income, you can look at the pool fees and things like that, where I've actually had to use the 3-year weighted average to
That's
come
right.
up with the number, okay? Because we didn't have collections. You look at municipal court, it's the same way. We got hammered on those revenues. Typically, what the state allows us to do is that we're allowed to actually anticipate revenues up to what we received in the prior year. Because of COVID, they decided to give us a little break on that.
Right, you got your 3-year average.
So they're allowing me to do the 3-year average, which means for interest income, I can anticipate $300 and some odd $1,000, whereas under the regular rules, I would only be able to anticipate 150, I think.
Yeah, we're hoping that this only goes on for
Yeah.
6 months and that normal core operations start back in July.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
So, the thing is that, while it may be a little more conservative on the UCC fees, I've really tried to go with the 3-year weighted average for a lot of the other fees. Most of them that were included in that $1.7 million. And, I say this every year, I'll say it this year. We budget conservatively so that we don't have to worry about things like COVID or Hurricane Sandy or financial crisis or any of the other issues that affect a lot of municipalities where they're having to scramble around for money to pay for this stuff. Our budget has been very beneficial to us in things that we've done down at the DCA and with our rating agencies, which is golden. I mean, we have a AA plus rating with Standard & Poor's. We don't get that AA plus rating because we're running a threadbare budget. That AA plus rating gets us very advantageous interest rates on the market. The other thing is that when we went to DCA during that big refinance or the big tax appeal hits that we were taking in the 2013 to 2016, I was able to go down to the DCA to get special financing for tax appeal refunding bonds, okay? Typically, they were only going to allow a 2-year payout, okay, for that. But because of the way we structured our budget, the director gave us another year on top of it. They were impressed with the way we handled COVID, or not COVID, Hurricane Sandy, because we were able to manage the expenses through our operating budget as opposed to having to go out for special bonding and the whole 9 yards. They were so impressed with that they gave us an extra year. So the way we structure our budget is really very advantageous to the town overall because of those things. We get lower financing costs. We get extra consideration at the division because of the way we run things. So I know that it's conservative, and if you want it, I mean, I could sit there, we could gut this thing and give taxpayers a one-time reduction in taxes, but next year, where are you gonna go? Okay? So I understand, the concern on some of the line items, especially in the revenue side, but we do that for a purpose. This year, we're doing it because we got a hit with COVID, and we have uncertain revenues for 2021. So we don't want to sit there and budget right up to the line.
No, and I think everybody realizes how you've been presenting your budget, and it is great that we do that, and that we're able to be very conservative, rebuild, and then give it right back to the taxpayers. Anyway, if there's a surplus,
Yeah.
we use it. We don't keep it. They get it right back next year
Yeah.
to help stabilize next year's impact or minimize any impact.
Sure.
And I know there's no way to really anticipate revenue. You just don't know what's really going to happen, even though you had a great year or a great history of one area. But I think, again, I'm not going to give you everything I have right now. I'm going to make notes and probably
Yeah, sure.
send you some of my recommendations and have you look at it. But I just think there's areas in there we can just go over without gutting the budget, but maybe trim a little bit on each. If we had to do every line item, I could find something in each one within a few bucks if we had to. But it's tedious, and I'd rather do this. I always threaten you what we're going to do that, and then you come back with something that's pretty good anyway. So I'm going to just stop talking here. I'm going to open it up to the other members and let's hear their thoughts and what they've been looking at. And we'll start like we do, alphabetical order, unless you want to go reverse this time.
That's fine. I want to run over there real quick because I can't
Go
see.
ahead, Rob.
So, Steve, on that spreadsheet that you have up,
Mm-hmm.
line 15, cancellation of unexpected appropriation reserves.
Rob, just talk louder because I can't hear you.
Sorry.
No, you're okay. I just can't hear what you're saying.
So, just, can you explain, I sort of get it. Can you explain what that line is again, please?
Yeah, so, we have a budget every year,
Right.
we'll say $38 million.
Right.
Now, we budget for everything,
Right.
but we don't spend everything,
That's what I thought.
okay? So that's the balance that's left over.
So can you go, because you got B to O, so you have previous years there.
Yeah.
Can we just see go back to 15 or 14, please? So my question is, if they're consistently somewhere, and granted 14 was an exception,
Rob, nobody can hear you according to Tom Rue, so you're going to have to use a microphone.
all right, my eyes aren't as good as they used to be. So if we look at 14,
If we look at what it is from,
Better.
on average, you're looking at somewhere around what, 1.5 to, and I can't see it. So let's say 1.5 for argument's sake, with the exception of 2014. So my non-financial mind says if we're putting 1.5 in and take extra, and we're taking 1.5 out every year, do we need the 1.5 million?
The answer is yes, we do need it.
Okay.
First off, like I said, you don't want to be like right up to the line with everything. You don't want to sit there and you don't want to overestimate your revenue.
I'm with you.
You don't want to underestimate your expenses. You want to leave something in there to regenerate surplus. Now, that's been our that has been our philosophy, as it were,
I'm with you.
since well before I came. The reason is that we use a lot of surplus, and we generate it, and then we use it, and we also try to keep some on hand for emergencies.
I'm with all of that. So again, in my simple mind, isn't it a net zero? So if we're putting it in to begin with and taking it out consistently about the same amount, plus or minus every year, I understand your point. Are they mutually exclusive, or you're saying that's why we're doing it, and that money is not a net zero? It's that addition each year.
Well, what happens too is your appropriations change every year, so one department may have a surplus at the end of their year based on some of the things they may not have been able to do, where another department may have been over on their appropriations based on stuff they had to implement. So it fluctuates back and forth. You can't just say we're going to cut 5% from each department, where that doesn't really add up at the end of the year. And then if you get to the point where you don't have the money to do transfers, then you're in trouble the following year with it. You're already into a deficit. So
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. What was the other one? So you mentioned on bands versus permanent funding, Steve.
Huh?
So the points that you were making today, if I heard you correctly, bands is in general, bands is better because you're not paying as many fees and it's 1 year. When we did last year or 2 years ago the permanent funding, why did we do? And it was a benefit then. We all agreed it made sense, and you explained it. Can you just refresh my memory why we went permanent then and not continue to do bands?
Yeah, because what we had done was that we had been targeting roughly doing ordinances with about $2 million worth of bonding. Okay.
What's this for?
Well, that all went out the door. The 5 years prior to us actually going to permanent financing in 2019. Not because we were going crazy. It was just we had a lot of projects. It was we purchased things like 1515 Logan and 1001 Wickapecco. We did pretty aggressive road programs, that kind of thing. There was a whole lot going on. Well, we were we had, in that 5 years we had accumulated roughly 16 million, I think it is. I got it on my desk.
That's okay. I get it.
Anyway, we had accumulated a lot more than our $2 million, and the way that the $2 million was working was, you do $2 million of financing, pay $200,000 off, and you continue that on. You get to a debt. Hopefully you get to a stable debt service that way. 2 million comes on, 2 million comes off. Okay. We didn't do that, and we couldn't do it, and so we needed to permanently finance what we had. All right. So I'm always an advocate of trying to do things with the short-term financing. I think that's the way to go. It's conservative and it takes a lot of guts, because to get there you see increases every year in your debt service, but once you get there, then it's like a bathtub with a drain. The water comes in, water goes out, and it stays level.
Okay. All right.
That's kind of what I'm saying as far as trying to use the debt we got coming off in 2025 and in 2029 to kind of like get us to that spot.
Got it. So, like Chris, I have tons of notes, and I don't want to go line. They're not line by line, but in your front page summaries, page 6 through whatever, I have a ton of notes. I won't go into them now either.
All right. Well, if you want to send them to me, that's fine.
Yeah, and I think frankly they're more. They're probably more Tom, because they're not necessarily as much dollars and cents as they are questions. For example, sanitation. I've always asked, do we have the right number there?
Oh yeah.
And, right? Do we have the right number of head count? Because of not necessarily the winter per se, but summer. We've always talked about parks being cleaned up and things like that. So,
Well, I can kind of generally
Go
answer
ahead.
that question.
Shoot.
I mean, these guys are not working 8 hours a day. They work a task day, so they come in, they do their thing, and they get up. So they're out of here by 12, 1 o'clock. So, do we need more people? I don't think so. We've gone from a high of 22 people down to 11. Those are the guys who man the trucks, and we did it through the robotic trash.
let me clarify, not sanitation. Buildings and grounds or
Right, but sanitation, they know that coming in when they get these
Correct.
jobs.
Yeah.
That's been like that, Steve, when my friends worked there
Yeah,
45 years ago after high school.
I'm not.
They knew that they're done and they're at the Oakhurst bar by 12. That's what they did. Not this group. This group's more responsible, but the old guys.
Right.
No, and it's probably not
Goes to
sanitation.
autos.
It's more grounds, because every summer we're saying, I shouldn't say every summer, but we noticed last summer that there was an increase in the need for bodies to clean up. That there just seemed to be more stuff around town that wasn't getting cleaned.
Yes.
Well, we
So
actually.
if Mark thinks we're good, that's great. I'll take his word for it. And Tom, if you've had that conversation, so that was one of them. But I'll likewise I'll send Tom and or you.
All right. Well, I was going
and-
to say that we actually do have a open position budget.
I did notice that.
In addition to his regular staff for buildings and grounds for this year.
And I think that summertime, Rob, I think it's always a point of we could have managed it better. And I'm not blaming the department heads. I think it really comes from the top again. we're able to utilize part-timers, you know, and get that in there. And I think we should really look the next manager in and just say, we really want to push to have that, because that's the look of the town. We offer people a 5-star service here, and we want to make sure the ashtrays are clean.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
Yeah.
it just makes sense.
I'm with you. So, thank you. Good job, as always.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Marge, do you have anything, Margie? Have you had a chance to go through this?
Yeah.
Pretty good?
Yeah, I'm just so I think overall I'm impressed because I thought it would be a little it would be given COVID and the lack of income and the other restrictions from last year, I thought it would be a little bit worse. So I'm kind of impressed that it's not as bad as I thought it would be. I just had a question about like the I know last year the recycling was a big increase to the budget. How did that pan out over? And you touched it briefly. How did that pan out over the last year? And then I was wondering, the people staying home, was there an increase in the cost to that? People producing more garbage.
Well, we spent really about 1.450. Okay, $1,450,000. I mean, I got budgeted 1,400,000.
Okay.
Which I don't necessarily think adequately cover it, but hopefully with the changes in the recycling, we should realize something there. The big driver here is the cost of recycling, and the county with their tipping fees. I mean, they've just every year they jack them up. This year's no exception. They're hitting us with a $15 per ton increase, which is massive. So
are you assuming stable tonnage over the years, or is it something that?
No, the tonnage stays relatively stable. You'd be surprised.
Okay.
It
Just the
does
cost
stay
is
pretty
the
pretty
barrier.
steady. And we also have our diversion rate, which is the amount that goes to recycling, is roughly 30%. So we do a good job with the recycling. It's just the market is against us.
Okay.
If I
And then
can-
for the
If I may.
go ahead.
Like Steve said, the market for recycling is down. It costs more to pick up recycling, and a lot of times they don't even send it to a recycling center, depending who the company that picks up. They send it to the landfill and just bury it because it's cheaper to do it that way.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's it.
Yes, got a couple questions.
Margie, take those kids out in the snow, will you?
All right. Steve, I have a question on data processing, line 707. I don't want to go through every specific line, but I just saw a couple things that jumped out to me that just seemed a little higher than actual, so I wanted to know, what is the increase percentage-wise that we need for 2021 for the data processing, line 707?
Well, one of the things that were in line 707, the things that are included in there happen to be things like the credit card processing fees, and those continue to keep going up. It's not the discount rate that we're paying, it's the number of people who are using them. We have a lot of people, especially in recreation, and some in well, it's actually all recreation. We don't take credit cards with a fee in tax. That's paid by the taxpayer. But we've had a big increase in the people who use credit cards over in rec, code enforcement. Those credit card fees, of course, we're having to pay for, and they show up in the data processing line. The other thing is that we're also doing a lot more with cloud-based computing. We just moved Edmunds, our financial and tax collection software, onto the cloud, which is really advantageous for the town overall, but that has a cost, So there's a $4,800 fee for hosting that. There's also going to be cloud-based POS, which is what the police and actually we all use for time management. That's going to have a cost out there as well. You know, going to the cloud is advantageous to the township in that the costs that you see hitting the operating expenses will kind of help in the capital side, where we're not having to buy as many servers and server-related equipment. So that's where really the changes are coming from.
Steve, Dave, can I interrupt a second and just follow up on that? So when you did and I do this for a living, from taking people from premise-based to cloud. So Steve, when you did it, I assume you did an analysis, and I get that you're moving from CapEx to an operating expense. The net of that over X number of years, are you seeing a savings, an increase, net neutral? I'm curious.
I think it's going to be net neutral.
Okay.
I mean, that $4,800, you know, a server, just a blade, is going to cost you about that, maybe even more. You know, then there is the issue of security. You know, now there's a lot of redundancy. I think Edmonds uses the Amazon
Web service.
Web service. So, you know, you've got a little more security going on there. You've got more backup, although we have a pretty robust backup down here at Town Hall. The other thing is that with Edmonds on the server, you know, our cops can access it, so they can actually, you know, look up things like the animal control, you know, see the dogs a person might have, or other information that might be on our tax system that can help the police, you know, names, addresses, that kind of thing. But yeah, I think of it as a net neutral.
Okay. Thank you.
So getting back to the credit card processing, because I know we just did this in my office. When was the last time the township updated their terms with the vendor? Is that recent, or is it something that might be renewed? Because even in my own office, we thought we had a good deal. We brought somebody else in, and we got it. Every time I get the bill, I can't believe that it's decreased as much as it has. So we were paying way too much for credit card services. I guess my point.
We're right now we're at an average of about 2.6 for our overall discount fee. Okay, which is really pretty good. We use TSYS right now. We used to use it was Encore, I think it was, and Heartland security processing systems before that. We generally do that as part of our banking RFP. When we go out for bank services, we slap in the credit card processing as well. That's how we wound up with TSYS right now. When we did our last RFP back in 2017, that was part of the package. You know, so we do periodically go out for RFP to see what kind of rates are out there.
Yeah, just because I know, because so many people are using credit cards now, and I think there's a lot of aggressive rates out there. You hate to be giving, you know, basically, in my case, in my office, I felt like I was just throwing money away, you know, convenience, but yet not in my pocket, type of thing.
No, I mean, there's a trade-off. You know, a lot of businesses, the way the credit card companies say is like you get your money right then, as opposed to waiting 30 or some odd days. And I don't know whether that argument really holds true, but everybody is playing, you know, everybody is paying with plastic nowadays. You know, you know, just about everything. I mean, I even got a debit card for health insurance to pay my health insurance costs. It's just wild. I don't know how many of you guys actually have any real green money in your pocket, but I can tell you that many days I have nothing. It's just the debit credit cards. That's
Does
it.
Bitcoin count?
Yeah.
Usually when
You got that in your pocket?
Usually when we order lunch, he doesn't have any money.
Looking for it.
Exactly. I'm always relying on the kindness of strangers when it comes to buying lunch. But
Excellent.
it is a significant cost, and it's grown quite a bit since 2010.
Yeah,
And it's one of those
no
we have
doubt.
to manage. Yep.
Next question. Deferred leave. I see there's a fairly significant increase in the deferred leave. I just wanted you to kind of shed some light on that.
Yeah, with deferred leave, we have a deferred sick and a deferred vacation leave reserves. And what those are used for, they're used for paying people who retire, or people who leave, who are entitled to vacation or sick leave benefit at retirement. One of the other things we use it for as well is the police contractually have the ability to buy back their vacation, and so we take that money out of there as well. We've seen a big, like I said, a big turnover in the past 3 or so years in the police department, and we've had, lieutenants and captains retire, and we have to pay them out their contractually negotiated sick leave in retirement, and that's what we use to pay it. This way we're not hitting the budget for those numbers when they occur. So we've really banged those funds hard in the past couple of years, and last year and the year before, whereas I should have been, putting more into that account for the sake of budget stability, I've kind of held back. But this year we really have to step up and fully fund those accounts.
Yeah. My other thought too is, as to Chris's point, it seems to me like there's construction going on all over the place, and it's almost mind-boggling to think that the numbers actually went down. But I got to think that at some point this seems like it's going to pop, because all I got to do is drive through Oakhurst and Wanamassa, and all I see is dumpsters and construction. So I'm wondering if it's a lag, or maybe it's just we're not seeing the money. But I got to think that it's just, from my feeling, it looks like tremendous growth going on.
Well, I don't know so much about the growth. I know that we've been pretty lucky in the past couple of years with construction code fees. They've really been pretty solid for the past 3 years. But it wasn't that long ago where we only generated $400,000 from construction code fees. That was probably, not even to say 5 or 6 years ago. And in my budget presentation to the governing body for the Broadway presentation that we do in April, I have an analysis on the construction code fees. The other thing that we have to be concerned with is the division has been starting to really pay attention to UCC fees. They've sent out several nasty grams in the form of local finance notices and memos from the director about how UCC fees are supposed to fund the Office of Construction Code and not general budget operations. If they get really nasty, they can tell us that we're going to have to cut our fees to match the actual expenses for the department. So we have to be careful about construction code. Even anticipating more than what it really costs our town to fund that operation, that like I said, they're looking at it, and I'd rather not poke the bear.
Gotcha. I think there was even some conversation to actually raise the construction fees. I don't know where we went with that, but there was even some talk about raising the fees.
I think Ron's working on that.
Yeah, he is.
He
Yeah.
asked me for some information, so I know he's putting together an ordinance for us, for your guys' action.
Well, that I don't know whether you want to do that or not, considering the amount of fees that we're actually raising. That department costs, and this is part of a UCC report we do on an annual basis. That department costs us about $620,000 to run. Okay, and that includes overhead and everything else, benefits, the whole 9 yards. past couple of years, we generated over $1 million in UCC fees. Okay, I wouldn't be surprised if the state was at some time in the future going to say, hey, these fees are unreasonable, you have to cut them. So to increase them, I don't necessarily think that might be a good thing to do. You know, I'm all about, you know, it's great getting that extra money, but the day they put the hammer down, that's going to be a world of hurt, because we'll have to cut $400,000 out of our revenues when that happens.
Is it worth, and this is more of a Tom question, I think, and you may be too new to answer it, but is it worth hiring some additional code enforcement folks to offset that? Because in a lot of cases, there are delays, inevitably. There are a lot of things that go on with COs, especially in the summertime, college students, all of that. And there are obviously issues out there that we're always, you know, sending to Ron to say, hey, can you go have somebody check this out? With that, I mean, that's something that you can have the conversation with Ron with, but it might help. Not much, I get it, 40,000, 45.
And also, when he brings forth the increase in fees, some of them may be justified, and, you know, most of them probably won't, like Steve said, but, you know, some of them may be justified depending on the circumstance. So, you know, we'll take a look at everything when it comes in.
Okay.
Okay, and my last, well, getting close to my last question. Just the court fees looks like they sort of were staying stable. Why such a big jump for the 2021 in municipal court fees there? Or
Well, actually, we cratered in court fees, and you know, I mean, only a couple of years ago we were collecting $600,000 in those. I think last year, I don't even think we did 200,000.
Yeah.
Okay. I used a 3-year weighted average because, you know, because the division allowed us to do a 3-year weighted average on, you know, the COVID affected revenue line items, and that's one of the ones that I did it with. That's why it's higher this year than what we actually collected last year. Okay, I did that with interest income as well. You know, I'm anticipating that with the vaccine now available and you know, that hopefully we get back to regular operations, that those fees should come back up. You know, that's kind of my hope.
good. All right, my last issue, and you can tell me, is this a good time for it or not? I do want to bring up the subject of council pay. Should we do it now, or should we do it at some other point?
We're gonna do it. We're gonna go into closed. You can do it under that.
Okay, fair enough. That's it. I'm good.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Who's up, John?
My a lot of my stuff was yours, Chris. So I mean, I'm not going to belabor it. You know, UCC. I want to look at that because I do believe that we're going to still have a heavy year. There's a lot of people doing construction. They're doing home improvements. So, Steve, we got to look at that. The health insurance. Even doing some quick figuring myself. Even if we add 5 new employees and we're picking up 80%, it's less than 100,000. Health insurance, even if it went up 3%, which you said 1.9, I think it went up 2.9. Might have been 1.9. I don't really know. But
Well,
even if that went up, your total actual would be roughly $2,160, $2,160,000. So could we look back into the health insurance as well? I think that's higher. The motor fuel I had written down. The electricity looked pretty high. The breakage also. The only other question I had was the interest on the accounts. Now there was a $200,000 spread. You think it's going to go down that much?
It's already gone down.
You're not getting anything now.
Well, I mean, we weren't getting anything last year, the year before. So.
It's worse.
We're actually starting to get some decent revenue.
off on interest.
Yeah, let me just go there.
You have 14 million in the bank, you'll get something.
2019.
We should put it in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Either
2000.
GameStop.
It's not in the.
Yeah, right.
It's not in the cash management plan. We can't do it.
Okay.
There you go.
Steve, let's buy GameStop.
Buy GameStop. Yeah,
We
exactly.
can change the market.
2019, we collected $500,000 in interest.
Right.
Okay.
Pretty
Last year, 157,000.
Last year, 157,000.
I'm anticipating
On that kind of money, that's all they're giving
The
us.
rates are down, John,
Rates-
to,
the rates cratered
Right.
after COVID kicked in back in March last year. I mean, they just absolutely cratered.
I mean, real estate's going up because of it, and the mortgages are out there,
Right.
and
Yeah.
Right.
people are borrowing as much as they can for as long as they can for as little as they can.
Right.
I mean,
That's
I
really the
just
model.
refinanced at 2.5%.
So,
Yeah,
Steve, I'm,
right.
those were my issues, and I'm not going to belabor because, it's pointless. I mean, we brought it up, so if you
Yeah, I think what we'll do is like we usually do, folks, is you guys just go over your budget again. You have plenty of time, and you have line recommendations. Steve can refer to them that way in an email, or go drop something off at his office, and him and Rob can go through it all. And he's going to get that from us. He knows it's coming, and it's just a matter of where we end up. Listen, nobody wants a tax increase ever. It's no matter if you're. It's not a political thing, it's an economic thing. We all live here, and we don't want that. We want as much as we can for as little as we have to pay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the look we're going for.
Right.
And I think Steve knows that. I know he watches every penny. I know that because I got a letter from a lady saying she was 6 cents off on her property tax. We won't go there, but he counts every penny. I'm not kidding. So I think we'll just... Like I
that
said,
6 cents was the tip of the iceberg.
I'm not going to go there. Let's leave that one alone.
On Stevie's tombstone.
I got beat up enough over it. But I think that's how we pretty much will handle it. So Dave and Marge, you guys had a good sense, and it's a good review for you. I think this is your second budget cycle, so you get a sense of what we do here and how it's done. And you have your notes. Both of you had some great questions today, which was awesome. Means you read it. And so I think Steve appreciates that after all the work they put into it. And again, go over it again and again. There's stuff that I always go through it a couple of times. And gee, I missed that, and I'll question, what's this about? And he'll give me the answer. Not that we're always satisfied, but at least he has the answer for it. So I think the highlight of the thing was, like he said, we had a $1.9 million swing going against us, and we're asking for half of that to try to offset it. And so let's take it from there. Anybody else have anything? Anything you want to close with, Steve, or Tommy?
No, I just again, I just want to emphasize that the thing we do with this budget, it's conservative. It's always been conservative, and it's really protect the town and the taxpayers from instability.
And tax shock going
Yeah.
forward. You mentioned that over and over.
Right. I mean, my surplus analysis, I show that we went from
Oh, you don't keep
9.3 to
Thank you.
8.9, and I project out we'll be at 8.4 by the end of this year. Okay, and that's with the budget as it stands.
Right.
Okay, so one of the things that budget is constructed in mind is to try and keep, or maintain our surplus if we can possibly do it. I typically don't like to anticipate more than we regenerate in a year because that keeps it stable. But because of COVID and everything like that, I've had to continue with this $7.2 million that we're anticipating. So, that's the only thing that I can really say is that I'm trying to make sure that with this COVID thing, financially we have a soft landing, we set ourselves up for the future. You never know what challenge is going to occur. I think last year we were talking about surplus, and the comment was, oh, well, do we really need that much surplus? Well, if it wasn't for the surplus, we'd be looking at a whole different package right now.
No, and I was here for the Sandy years. We did the same thing. We had that $1 million cleanup, and we were fortunate enough to have, as Rob would say, take the appropriations and fold them back in as your cushion up and above beyond what we use on surplus for an event. And this year, I think COVID probably fell into the same line Whereas you need that cushion above and beyond what you will use and regenerate
In
for the
answer
emergency.
to the question I think Rob had in regards to the 1.7 or 1.8 that we're taking, that's roughly 4% of the appropriations, which, you know, that's pretty close when you're talking about a budget of $38-39 million as far as having whatever, you know, left.
Oh,
You know,
right,
we've done
right.
pretty good that way. You know, it looks like a big number, but we have a big budget.
Right.
So.
And don't forget, this year's gonna be another not normal year.
Yeah, you got 6 months at
As
least.
far as what's going on, so
Absolutely.
we'll have a better handle for everything. I hate to say this next year as far as everything, but as far as anticipation of revenue, he does a great job. I went through the numbers and looked at stuff, and it's better. Like he said, it's better to be on the conservative side, so you're going to meet all your obligations at the end of the year, and not be in a deficit like other communities have done. So, my hat's off to him.
And I think Tom nailed it. Although we're talking about 2020 and the challenges we met, we're not done yet.
Nope.
I mean, it continues into 2021, and I see that too.
That's one of the things about doing this budget this year, using the 3-year average. I mean, that kind of has me concerned. I'm hoping that revenue is going to pop back up. I mean, I see interest rates are starting to creep back up. That's a nice thing for us in some ways. But I'm concerned because I want to make sure that we hit the revenues, at least hit them. We don't need another year of a deficit in anticipated revenues to hit surplus. That's going to be like catastrophic.
Right.
So again, I try to be conservative on the revenues, especially this year because of that fact. That's pretty much it. So.
All right, we appreciate it. Thanks, Rob, Steve. All right, Tommy. We appreciate your time. We're going to go into closed session now.
Hey, Tom Rue, we're going to go into closed session, so I'm assuming you're going to stop doing what you're doing. Do you want me to stop
Let
recording?
me make a motion to adjourn this meeting. So make a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Second.
Deputy Mayor Napolitani.
Yes.
Council members Achara.
Yes.
Donlin.
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
And Mayor Siciliano.
Yes.
Let's take 5 minutes.
You woke us up, Marge. Meeting adjourned, folks. Thanks for joining us.